Okay, welcome to Econ 300. I've been talking for a while, but now I'm starting to record. And I was just saying, I'm very interested as to how the rest of the class, how they decided to form some opinion. I asked you to form some opinion whether you were for or against the Green New Deal. And the way that question is framed, I think really affects the way how people feel about this. And of course, I didn't frame it any particular way. I let you sort of maybe do some research on your own and decide. So, um, do you mind telling me what you came, whether you're for or against? Um, I almost want you to give like a little reason why, but maybe we'll save those for the end. Maybe we'll save those for the end. I want to know whether you're for or against the Green New Deal, and also why. For my own personal reasons, I want to know like what the young people of today are thinking about these sorts of questions. So, so far nobody has chatted anything to me, but could you chat to me whether you're for or against? Okay, thanks, Paula. Uh, I usually write this down. Jacob's undecided. Okay. Nick is undecided. Okay, got a lot of undecideds here. Jack against. Camila for. Sorry, Peter, Anna, Fabia, Peter, Anna, Fabia. Philip is strongly against. You didn't have to say strongly, Philip, but you did. You said you're strongly against.
Put that in my paper too, so I figured I'd put it in your question.
Oh, okay. So I'm not surprised when I get you. Lauren is for Matt for Joseph against. Oh, yeah, it surprises me a little bit, Joseph. I want to maybe hear more from you about that. Charlotte's for. Okay. I think that's everybody. Sorry, a couple undecideds, but most people are for. This kind of looks like the same distribution we've had in other progressive type policies. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 people are for the Green New Deal as the issue, as stated, and 3 against. Okay, so not a lot of, Tony already has a lot of support before the debate even begins, but there's some people, including Philip, who's very strongly against. I'm sure we'll hear from him after the debates. Let's just wait. Let's wait till after the debates. I kind of really want to get people's opinions to what they believe and why. And but I think it's unfair to the debaters if we spend too much time talking about that. So let's give them the spotlight now to try to convince us why we should and then why we should not be in favor of this Green New Deal. Do you guys, Tony, are you? Oh, I forgot. My bad. There you go, Tony. And then the other person is Blake, even though you're not Blake. I will try not to call you Blake. Your real name is James, not Blake.
Okay.
Okay. Got Tony first, and we got James second. Okay, are you about ready, Tony, to start your debate presentation? Remember, you can always save some things for like a rebuttal, or sometimes people will just go all the way to end, give everything they have, and then maybe you can have a rebuttal. But of course, you don't know what James is going to say, so feel free to just decide how much you want to give. But go ahead. I'll give the floor to you.
Sounds good. So I have screen share activated here. Let's see. Are you able to see my screen? Oh, my voice cracked.
Not yet. No, we don't see it.
How do I do this?
Can you go to share screen at the bottom?
Oh, the green button.
Green button.
All right, desktop, Keynote. Let's do desktop. Oops, open system preference. Oh no, Apple. What have you done to me?
Uh-oh.
Now to activate something. Click the lock to make changes. Use my password, Touch ID. All right, I'm gonna let Zoom. Uh-oh, I have to create my screen and reopen.
You
So
think
I'll
we
be
should
right.
actually let James go first?
Okay, I'll be right
While you
back.
figure that out.
All
James,
right.
you think you're ready to go?
Yeah, I can go. Hopefully I
Okay,
can.
I see that Tony is now, he should be paying attention, but he's just closed out. I think it's okay. I think you can go ahead and um, start if you're ready.
I'm trying.
Are you having trouble too?
Yeah. Let's see.
You know how to share. There's a button on the bottom, whatever your Zoom screen is, there should be somewhere that says share screen. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Let's see. Can you see that now?
It's not in presentation mode, but yes, we can see it.
Okay. Let's.
Click on the slideshow. I think.
Looks good.
All right. So I did against the U.S. passing the Green New Deal. Some of the objectives of the Green New Deal. It was proposed to tackle the issue of inequality and climate change by Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Markey. Specifically, it was to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions through a fair and just transition for all communities and workers, and to create millions of good high-wage jobs and ensure prosperity for all people of the United States. It is aimed to have 100% green energy goal in a decade's time, so by 2030 from when it was written. Researchers, let's see. So 5 of the things I'm going to go over here is the high cost in financing the Green New Deal, the negative environmental effects that actually come out of the Green New Deal, the federal government expanding involvement in the energy sector, marginal excess burden of the tax system, and the large hidden costs that are in the Green New Deal that may not seem so obvious. So some of the high costs associated with financing the Green New Deal, it's been estimated that it could cost on the high end of $93 trillion over 10 years. I've also saw a figure on the lower end, $53 trillion. So that's a big number difference, but it's also not the easiest thing to be able to predict how much it will cost. So $5 trillion alone just to switch from coal, nuclear, natural gas to 100% renewables. So this is the 10-year breakdown with 5.4 trillion for low carbon electricity grid, 2.7 trillion for net zero emission system, 4.2 trillion for green housing, and then 36 trillion for universal healthcare, 45 trillion for a jobs guarantee. So that's a 10-year breakdown. On this next slide, I have what would be the actual annual breakdown. So around $9 trillion. And as you can see, the actual, I guess before I knew anything about the Green New Deal, I just thought of renewable energy. And as you can see, the renewable energy part of it is actually about 10% of the cost of the actual bill. It's only $490 billion a year, whereas the actual forming of a political coalition and the taxes that it will cost Americans over time with that tax burden is significantly more at 4 trillion, 4.5 trillion for the tax burden, and about 4 trillion for the budget cost of the political coalition. So a little bit further into the high cost of the Green New Deal. The estimate of the aggregate cost of the electricity component, like I was just stating before, is around $357 billion annually to around $490 billion. One of the biggest reasons why is because 77% of the current total capacity right now for energy is non-renewable. So, you know, not even 25% right now is renewable energy. So all of that would have to be replaced. So transmission costs for wind and solar power is actually 2.5 times higher in price for wind and 3.3 times higher in price for solar compared to natural gas generation. The cost of additional backup capacity and generation for the replace non-renewable with renewable systems would cost $76.9 billion a year, which would come out to about $603 extra per household in an electricity bill every year. The cost of land that would be needed with this would be significantly more, considering we don't have, you know, to reach 3 times more renewable energy right now. It would be, so I guess in a way to describe this, 1,000 megawatts of wind energy, you would need 64,000 acres of land versus a gas fire plant requiring only 30 acres of land. So the annual figure for the cost of land for the Green New Deal renewables mandate is $7.8 billion annually, or about $61 per household in taxes. So the cost of storing and conserving renewable energy will be significantly higher. Let's see. So here is a graph on basically by state what the annual electricity costs per household would be. So the average right there is about 4,655, whereas that would be about $600 higher per household. So the negative environmental effects of what I said was the not so green New Deal. The Green New Deal would create significant environmental damage in the beginning. The goal of having clean electricity require massive land use of over 115 million acres. In comparison, this is a little bit over 15% of the size of California. Not to mention the need for conventional backup generation to avoid blackouts would also, it would increase greenhouse gas emissions. The increase in greenhouse gas emissions would come from the natural gas fire backup generation or generators that would be needed, because an all green battery backup technology would lead to a large increase in the frequency and duration of blackouts. So, you know, in theory, it sounds a lot better to have renewable energy, but to actually have all of that renewable energy, you would have to still use fossil fuels to be able to store the energy. An all green approach to battery backup wouldn't be really acceptable to a majority of Americans. The greenhouse gas emissions from natural gas fired backup generation would be 22% higher than the emissions from a figure in 2017 of what the emissions are coming from backup generators right now. So there would also be a heavy metal pollution created by the production process for wind turbines. And there would also be large problems of solar panel waste and toxic metals from those when, you would have to replace them, recycle them every year, or not every year, but every time you need a new one. So next thing would be the federal government expanding their involvement in the energy sector. So right now, the federal government is not the fossil fuel industry, which is, like I said, almost 80% of the energy source right now for America is mainly the private sector, and they're not controlling you when not controlling how much you can use, when you can use it, where you can use it. So increased federal control could cost Americans not only financially, but with their own privacy. So federal control would lead to overregulation that could dictate how producers create energy, how people use that energy, how farmers raise livestock, and how consumers drive cars and build homes. Government implemented policies would limit the global usage of natural resources. This would result in other energy industries that receive less government regulation to be able to abuse environmental standards. The energy sector is best left with private companies and not the government to avoid the rationing and politicizing of energy use in the future. So the next thing would be, I kind of spoke on this earlier, the marginal excess burden of the tax system. So the acquisition of the resources that are needed to sustain 100% renewable power is going to have to be obtained through the current tax system or a future, tax generation or a future tax generation, which in turn is ultimately going to leave a burden on that generation. And as we see it now with certain things, we feel like we may have been left a burden from past generations. It's a trickle down effect. Taxes in the long run are shown to change economic behavior through investment, savings, transaction, work effort. So in turn, aggregate output reduces to a lower level that is called what is the excess burden of taxation. So according to one source, higher marginal tax rates used to finance additional federal spending would impose an excess burden of 76 cents per dollar of revenue. So it costs the private sector $1.76 to send an additional dollar to the federal government. And going a little bit further into like some more of the large hidden costs of the Green New Deal. There's a lot of what I thought of as kind of like hidden things within the Green New Deal. And I really tried to focus on the energy part of this bill, because it kind of goes in all directions. So one of the largest hidden costs associated with the Green New Deal is the inflation that comes with creating money as a financing instrument. So the inflation rates would be roughly 10 to 20% annually, which would equal $2 to $4 trillion annually. The largest hidden cost within the Green New Deal is the cost of a single payer healthcare system, which is estimated to cost 3.2 trillion annually. The switch to 100% renewable energy is a very small figure compared to the social objectives that are squeezed into the Green New Deal. And those are my sources. All right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody have any clarifying questions before well, he took down his slides, but sometimes I like to ask about the graphs, but
Oh, yeah.
you went by pretty quickly. It was something about the cost per state. For each state, what would be the cost to going to renewables, energy? Given, I guess the idea was that somewhere like Vermont already has a bunch and somewhere like Wyoming doesn't.
Mhm.
That it, and that's why
Yeah.
you have to pay more. People who live in Wyoming are going to have to pay more to transition to renewable energy. Is that what the point
Yeah,
of that
so
graph was?
it's kind of based off of like so the way that, if the government was, controlling 100% of the energy, then you have to think about like I read that they would use like smart meters and stuff in houses. So basically, if you're not on a grid, like if you were in a city, you'd be in a lot easier of a place to obtain the electricity that you would need. So, which is why it does go in hand with the actual, bringing up poverty levels while creating, energy, for all, is people in the city would be able to afford it easier than somebody in Wyoming, where it would be, they would have to get it all the way out there
Okay.
and store it.
Anybody else, or can we let Tony go? You think you figured it out how to share, Tony?
I think I do by far. So let's do this one more try. Host disabled participant screen sharing. All right, let's see here. It says your host disabled participant screen sharing.
How about now?
Okay, perfect. Let's do keynote, hold shift, and then share.
Nice.
Awesome. So I just realized after reviewing my writing, it sounds too political than economic, because it was pretty tough for me to find things correlating to economics. But I'll do my best from here.
Okay.
All right, so let's play loop. All right. So the Green New Deal, published by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ed Markey, is a brave transformation of our economy to implement climate change as well as inequality. So this will change our economy that is currently built on fossil fuels as well as ill treatment or exploitation to clean energy and noble jobs. All right. So provided by climatologists, this chart displays how much global temperature has increased since our discovery of fossil fuels. Scientists said we should stay under 1.5 degrees Celsius. Nevertheless, it was then mentioned we'd be okay if we reach up to 2.0. However, scientists later realized 1.5 to 2.0 is no longer the safe zone, as we could face seasonal animal migrating from one place to another, wildfires as well as heat stress. So this could cost us trillions of dollars and millions of lives. If we pass this 2 degrees Celsius, then it'll be nearly irreversible to bring ourselves back to below 1.5. But as of right now, it seems like as if we are on our way to surpassing 2.0. So what would the Green New Deal achieve? Well, clean air and water. So this would clean up hazardous waste sites and reduce toxic air as well water pollution from gas, coal, and oil. So those who primarily benefit from this the most are from low-income households who are currently facing exposures to toxins. Also, justice and equality. So a portion of the benefit from the Green New Deal goes to working class families that face disproportionate economic as well environmental hazards for many decades. The Green New Deal will impede economic exploitation by providing unfortunate communities access to new jobs opportunities and pollution cleanup projects. We will also upgrade existing buildings and constructing new buildings. So this will involve our developers as well architects to rethink the way buildings are designed, built, and financed through the lens of decarbonization. So this can also lead to more work provided, not only for constructing new buildings, but also retrofit our current ones for something more sustainable. And then we will also remove pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. So the primary goal is to reach net zero in a decade in the United States, which is to tally all the greenhouse gases that are released and then subtracting those that are removed. Therefore, there is no more net addition to the atmosphere. As for the rest of the world, we would have to reach net zero emissions of carbon dioxide by 2050. Now back to the United States, one of the most important areas in which emissions reductions are needed is transportation, as it is the sector with the highest greenhouse emission. So this will require the United States to remove emissions from the transportation sectors as much as feasible through investments in vehicle infrastructure and manufacturing. Also, we will target agriculture, as about 9% of the nation's greenhouse gases stems from the release of nitrous oxide from soil and methane livestock. So the Green New Deal is working with farmers as well as ranchers to remove its pollution as well emissions, including supporting family farming, investing in sustainable farming, and increasing soil health and building a more sustainable food system. Now we'll move on to power. So we can't power the nation without fossil fuels, as this will create new jobs in industry. Unfortunately, if we remove fossil fuels immediately, people will eventually lose their jobs and possibly homes. So ordinary Americans will suffer. However, I believe from the 2019 Green New Deal 14-page paper, in the second half, they spoke about that they will promise high quality education as well as training, universal health care, also jobs guaranteed. Because when new things get built, wealthy corporations jump in to build those projects, and those hired are the ones who are trained in that specialty. So the second portion of the Green New Deal in the 14th page will come in handy. And then, 2021. So several days ago, Representative AOC and Cori Bush introduced the Green New Deal for Cities Act of 2021. So this would federally distribute $1 trillion to cities, towns, and tribes over the next 4 years. So across the nation, especially in cities, children are more likely to test positive for lead in their blood. Therefore, the Green New Deal for cities will assist in replacing lead pipes, test soil and water for contaminants, and retrofit water infrastructure. Also, build more bike lanes, install electric vehicle charging stations, cleaning up parks, new green space, and decrease fossil fuel infrastructures. Now, a way to pay for this, I've yet to find the answer to cover all of the Green New Deal expenses, but we can no longer say we cannot afford to do this. So we have to do this so long as we are able to organize it well. So the investments can be a bit of a trouble and the risks are high. But in the United States, we make hundreds of billions of investments per year, and we also burn fossil fuels in the billions as well. So it'd be great if we shift something and have our government as well, industries provide long-term predictability and stability for this ambitious resolution. On to our societal changes. Not only this is for the United States, but also for the globe as well. So we'll need our government as well leadership shown by society, who must lecture the general populace on what needs to be changed and provide acknowledgement or acknowledge the widespread issue that the planet is warming up. So we need to make plans to change this, create a timeline, and make sure it fits the general realization to change things. Because for example, some countries in Northern Europe, such as I think the Netherlands, Norway, or Sweden, they started off with coal, and then they went from coal to gas, and then gas towards now renewables. So no dream is too big. One more thing. So this is, the planet was here before us, and we as humans, once we disappear, the planet still remains. So it's more so humanity is at risk, and we should be aware of that. And so we're doing this for humanity to create a sound balance between the planet and us. And that is all for now. Indeed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any clarifying questions for Tony before he takes down the slides? So you did realize that was a map of Europe when you had your last slide, right?
Oh, was. Oh yeah, it is indeed.
Yeah, you okay.
I also made a mistake over here because I searched up Google money and green planet, and then this NPR logo appeared instead. So
So you didn't actually want to reference the show Planet Money, the radio show.
that's right.
Oh, okay.
But that's the best I can find.
It does have the word planet and the word money. Nobody else has any questions? Would you guys like some time for any sort of rebuttals? Either one of you guys? Something you think the other person said you wanted to clarify or question?
I don't at the moment.
Okay.
I will say that, I mean, I kind of caught that he was saying that we would have time, something along the lines that we would be able to upgrade buildings, you know, that are in much need. I think one of the big things that's not hit on or probably realized as much is that almost every building would have to be, you know, any building that's going to be built in the future would have to be retrofitted to fit.
Retrofitted? If it's
Well, any new building would have to meet the standards of how to receive the energy from.
yeah,
Um,
that would be just fitting. I think retrofitting means
but retrofitting old buildings that don't
yes,
have the,
yes.
which would be, you know, any, if you put into like a small business, like unless they're getting, you know, unless they can afford it, you know, they would need probably a loan to get that done. And it's just on a massive scale. It's every building and then every future building that would have to be built. And depending, like, you know, from that graph that you were referring to earlier, you know, if you're a small business in the middle of Wyoming, it's not going to be the cheapest feet in the world. So one of the things I read too was it also does move a lot of businesses and, you know, living back towards cities, which in turn can create some more pollution as well. This is kind of general, but
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So we currently do not have the financial means to retrofit all the buildings we have across the nation. However, this will assist in creating jobs. But what I'm looking at right now is that this all needs to be done, and eventually we'll find ways to pay for it. We don't know how, but we'll find some sort of implementation in the future, because we just don't want to have the induced warming go above 1.5 degrees Celsius.
I think it's going to no matter what we do.
Right.
If we went to zero carbon emissions like today, I think the prediction is that it will still get to 1.5. And what we want is not to get above 2 or 2.5. And that even that is going to take some global, right? I mean, both of you guys focused, I think, on the American policy, whether or not we should, and that's what I asked you to do, is to talk about the Green New Deal. But of course, this is a global issue. It's simply not going to get done unless the entire globe attacks this problem of climate change. Okay. Yeah. So maybe now's the time to let some of the audience ask some questions. If they have anything they want to say, we can. I'll stop your sharing. Does anybody from the audience? I'm very curious as to why the audience in this particular question chose to be for or against it, and if there's anything you know, neither presenter brought up that you wanted to bring up. Phil, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I don't know if this was really answered by either of you, but like in your research, how is this paid for? Like the 90 trillion? Like I think the total assets of the entire United States was like 161 trillion with everyone. Like there's no conceivable way through current taxation that I can see to like fund this without like some insane level of like debt financing. So how would this be funded?
To be honest with you, I don't have the exact answer for it, so I really don't have much to say on it.
Maybe we should
Yeah.
talk about that figure though, the 90 trillion. Did everyone believe that as the cost of Green New Deal?
I don't
Seems,
believe it.
seems high to
I
me.
went through my data and that was the high end of the when I was looking at them. The different studies had it between I think it was like 50 and 90 trillion. Still
Well,
50.
that's, so
It's
that
still way high.
that was over a 10-year period, but
Yeah.
the realistic fact is that there is no number to be able to put on it. It's not anything that is even conceivable. And that was probably one of the hardest things to in the research, was to find, actual numbers, and I just kind of had to average what I found through multiple sources. Um, because when you throw in the universal health care and the guaranteed jobs, it goes, I mean, it goes very high. So that was the closest I could find, but that was over a 10-year period. So, but that's also with the tax burden that comes with it. So when you're printing off money to be able to pay for something, um, that money is going to be worth 2 or 3 times as much when you're trying to pay it back.
Okay. I think I have some opinions about this. I don't want to bring too much into the debate. I'd rather be a moderator here rather than a dictator to explain what I think. I think I can say that the way you calculate the cost of something is an extremely political and biased, right? There's almost no way to have an unbiased calculation about the cost of something, because even if it's something where you think everyone should agree on how to add this number up, there's different ways to do the accounting, and economists in particular, they tend to focus more on things like opportunity costs and marginal costs, and it sort of doesn't matter how the total cost is particularly included or not. Marginal costs are, however, do matter. And what do I mean by that? I mean, how much more expensive would it be to do this than to not do this, right? That's a more concrete, real thing to talk about, because this is, every single debate has this issue. How do you, if it's a cost benefit thing, like universal healthcare costs so much, you can rack up a giant number to say that's how much healthcare costs. I think what's more relevant is what's the marginal cost of doing it? How much more is it to do this, rather than, right now we have a privatized, most people have private healthcare and they are paying for it in some way through premiums, or their businesses are, their employer is paying for it. I mean, there is a cost of health insurance. It's not all necessarily bundled together to one number, whereas the universal healthcare cost is. And I think there's sort of a danger in saying, well, if we have universal healthcare, bam, here's this cost of how much it is, and we can't afford it. I sort of agree. If it really was that high, what matters is the marginal cost. How much more does it cost collectively by doing that? And so I think, if you look online for the cost of the Green New Deal, you have this figure 90 trillion. That is just enormous, right? That is huge. I agree with Philip that there is no feasible way to pay for that much. If that were the marginal cost of doing, you get what I'm saying? If the Green New Deal actually increased our government expenditure by $90 trillion over 10 years, I would say, in my opinion, no way. We cannot afford it. That will be a crippling amount of debt. We would be in danger of having a debt crisis. I don't know if I talked to you guys about a debt crisis. A debt crisis is when you can't find people who are willing to loan you the money anymore. The yield that you are willing to give your investors goes way up and up, and even then, even with the high yield, they're still not willing to loan you money. That's a debt crisis, and then ultimately you could go into default, and that would be horrible for the United States. We shouldn't let that happen. Okay, all of this is to say that, in my opinion, these costs, you want to talk about the cost of doing the Green New Deal. It's really hard to, you've admitted this, it's really hard to calculate. But I also think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of marginal costs, or, part of this is opportunity cost, right? We can do this or this. It's not, oh, if we do this, this is what happens. It's, you have to think about what you're giving up by doing this. And a lot of this is political and policy oriented. I think AOC in particular is somebody who has a lot of progressive goals. And a lot of those progressive goals are included into this Green New Deal. And they add up. They cost a lot of money to do all this stuff. And I had some questions about that too. And I guess what I personally believe is that the true marginal cost of implementing something like the Green New Deal is not anywhere near 90 trillion. That is just an enormous number that it seems a little biased, in my opinion. But like I said, everything's biased. What you include and what you don't is like the choice. And probably, I don't think that's a realistic number for how much more, what the increase in government spending would have to be over the next 10 years. That's my opinion. And so you might ask me, okay, well then what would it actually be? What would it really be? I don't know the answer to that. And I'm sorry, I haven't researched what the number would actually be, but affordability is a good question, right? You can't implement a policy if it's simply not affordable. But maybe we should, I'm glad you brought it up, Blake and Philip. But maybe we shouldn't focus too much on that for right now, for the next 10, 15 minutes that we have to talk about it, in the sense that we need to think about whether it's efficient in some sense, right? Even if we could afford it, let's say we could. Let's say, we have the money, taxes may go up, and there's a tax burden. I like that you talked about the tax burden, that it's not just you're paying $1, it's that you have to increase your prices, and then that increases the burden, that reduces the trade surplus in the market. That's all true. But is it efficient? Isn't that a more important question? That is it the best thing to do? Remember, if you go back to the first week of this class, I said it's really hard to define efficiency. Economists do it anyway, often, but it should be based on people's preferences in some sense. You may say, what does efficiency have to do with people's preferences? Well, you're sort of maximizing the quality of life of these people according to their own preferences in some sort of aggregate way, and thinking, with this policy, of course, Pareto efficiency is maybe a really great standard. You can achieve Pareto efficiency. You're making everyone better off without making anyone, you can't do anything different to make someone better off without making other people better off. That seems to be like a pretty good goal for economics. And let's think about the Green New Deal in terms of whether it's efficient, whether it's worth it to make all of these retrofitting business buildings, renewable energy, and cost. I'm talking too much. I'm curious if anyone else. Yes, we could spend a lot of time talking about whether or not it's affordable, and I actually really don't have a great answer for that. And I think we shouldn't do it if it's not affordable. But some people think it is. I know that. I know that some people think that there is a way to finance it that wouldn't be crippling to our economy, or our debt, wouldn't run us into a debt crisis. So what do you guys think about whether or not we should do this, in terms of maybe more of the line of whether it's efficient to do it, in terms of what the people of this country actually want? What do we want? I don't know. We want prosperity. We want good jobs. We want to buy the goods and services that we enjoy to consume. We also want clean air, and you know, we also don't want hurricanes hitting our worse and worse hurricanes every year. We don't want a huge migrant crisis for countries where there is no, you know, sea levels rise and it becomes, anyways. There are costs of climate change too that maybe should be factored in here into some way, that will really shape our discussion of whether or not something like this is an efficient use of government resources and taxpayer money. Okay, is anybody willing to talk about whether they're for or against the New Deal based on the Green New Deal, based on something like this?
I actually didn't know it costed that much. You guys are gonna laugh at me, but I thought it costed like $500 billion.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't really look at it. The reason I'm against it is the time frame, because it's not feasible to implement in the short amount of time that they want to implement it.
Maybe you were just looking at the renewable energy part of it.
Maybe,
right?
But like they wanted to move off fossil fuels within 10 years, and that's not really feasible. You can't move that quick. That's why I'm against it.
Oh, so you're against it because you think it's not feasible using, we don't have the technology to do it. Is that what
No.
you think?
We do. We just don't.
Oh.
We don't have the time. Like it's so condensed. We can't switch over to renewables that fast.
You think 10 years isn't enough time to rebuild the infrastructure that would be required for this electrical grid that has the renewable? Okay.
No, and I also, like, when they first rolled it out, I heard people read reports saying, 10 years that we can't move off fossil fuels completely in 10 years.
Okay.
So I think it should be around 15 years.
Okay. Not a big difference, 15 instead of 10. Although Biden did say something about by 2030 cut our emissions by 50%. Remember?
Yeah. I'm also for that. Like maybe 50%, not 100%. Like they.
Well, oh, by the way, though, if we go to completely renewable, that doesn't mean we're going to have zero carbon emissions, right? Every animal, all the cows that are in this country are creating a lot of carbon emissions, not just in their, flatulence, but also by eating grass and eating other things that would hold carbon. It actually, their effect is like twice, not just the animal, but the fact that they're eating places, corn that has to be grown to feed them. This whole process actually it takes carbon out of the ground and puts it into the air ultimately. Anyways, Nick's been having his hand up. I want to let him talk if he's willing to talk.
I just have a few things. First, I have a hard time, it's all such a hypothetical exercise, because even if you look at the proposed legislation, it's not really legislation, it's a resolution to create legislation. Correct. So any of these estimates, whether it's 50 trillion, 500 billion, or 90 trillion, none of them are based on, there's so much conjecture as to make those cost estimates borderline worthless. Okay. And then also one of the biggest questions I would have about the idea of guaranteed employment, or the labor question, I guess, would be, all right, even if we shut down every coal plant, stop coal mining, no more offshore drilling, no more fracking, all of those things, and we decide that we're going to, completely retool the way this country gives itself energy, I wonder if even if we create job training programs and all that kind of stuff, will people actually go to learn these new skills, number one? And if they do, will they be willing to move to the places where these jobs are? Because there's no guarantee that these jobs are going to be in the same places that people already live. And people are generally pretty reluctant to move, and there are financial reasons they might not want to move too, like if their home values depreciated or something like that, or if they've got a lot of family around. So I don't know, that's a big question for me.
This is always an issue with creative destruction. Sometimes it's bad for the people who are being destroyed. And Adam Smith would have something to say about the invisible hand pushing people. They may not want to move, but if the wages are high enough in this new place and it's attractive enough, eventually, at least not everyone, but some of them will move. There will be some invisible hand pushing them. Labor is a resource, and resources get guided to where they're most efficient in the free market, and that could happen.
Yeah, and even if people move to these new jobs, will it be enough people? Like, will we be able to get the number of people employed in these projects that will need to actually complete them?
That's a good question, right? It's ambitious, right? Kennedy was ambitious when he said we should go to the moon by the end of the decade, right? Joseph, you think 10 years isn't enough to electrify our grid, but Kennedy, at the same time, people are like, you're crazy, you can't get to the moon this decade. It was ambitious, and we rose to the challenge. I'm not saying that definitely we can do it, and this is the same thing, because like Nick said, it's a question of manpower. Do we even have the manpower needed to do all of this? I don't mean man versus woman, I mean person power. We have the person power needed to do all of these sorts of projects. It's massive projects. But you know what? It feels a lot like the New Deal. In the 1930s, I don't think FDR said exactly what all of this money was going to be spent on to stimulate the economy and to get people working again. It was all about getting people back to work with infrastructure jobs, like building dams and building things where probably some people thought, why do you need to build this dam, this bridge? Everything's fine. We don't need to do that. It was a worthwhile investment, not just because we needed the dams, of course, but because we wanted to get people back to work. And I think some of the people who support the Green New Deal are not just saying, well, by the way, we need to do this, otherwise we're in huge trouble. It's also, it'll be good for getting people to work in these places. They actually think we do have the manpower. We have to pay them for it. We're gonna have to spend some money on it, but we can get people back to work. And that's another thing. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I was gonna just say, government expenditure on like salaries. You might say, oh, what a waste of money, government spending salaries. I don't think so, really, because what do people do when they earn a salary? They spend it. It goes back into the economy. It's not just like all of that money is being wasted. Economists have a way to measure something like the velocity of money, the government multiplier of expenditure. And it's just a weird way to think about it. It's not necessarily that one extra dollar of government expenditure doesn't necessarily mean we're having one less dollar for our economy. That's not true, because the government expenditure usually stays in our economy for the most part. And that's actually more important. When you're talking about GDP, talking about what's the total production of our country, government spending doesn't just disappear. Let's say it's 90 trillion. It's not going to be 90 trillion, but if it were 90 trillion, that $90 trillion doesn't just disappear and it's gone, like we're burned it, we set it on fire. It actually mostly will get circulated back into our economy. And so the real question is, can we support it with the taxes, right? Are there enough people who aren't in the government who are making this money to support the people who are? And that is a concern, right? We don't want everybody working for the government. That would be bad. Okay, then what else? I'm curious if anybody else can tell me why they support the Green New Deal. I feel like there's other reasons from all of you, the 10 of you who supported the Green New Deal before this. Tell me if you still do, and if so, why? Is anybody willing to talk? I had Hala, Dorian, Camille, Peter, Anna, Fabiola, Christina, Laura, Matt, Charlotte. Any one of you 10? We had Philip and Joseph even give these arguments against it, but no one's willing to give an argument for it, huh?
I had a question.
Okay.
It was similar to why I was against. Does this Green New Deal just ignore the idea of like even trying cap and trade or even like trying carbon tax? Is that just saying it won't be effective without trying it? Is
Good
that
question.
is
So, right. So,
because research has shown cap and trade has worked where it's been tried in reducing carbon emissions, like exactly as it's intended. It's worked.
but does it, okay, I got your point, Phil, but what about switching from one system of electrical production to a new one? Is it
Well, no.
actually good at that?
See, I didn't even argue that switching to renewables eventually is a good idea. Like I agree that is a good idea. I do
Mhm.
not agree that like forcing that switch like right now over the course of 10 years is a good idea. I feel like that would just wreck huge sections of the economy. I believe when the technology and the cost of implementing renewable energy is cheaper as technology improves, that's when it's a good idea to switch all the way over to renewables. Because eventually non-renewables, by their very definition, are going to run out. I'm just
Yeah.
saying the technology right now is not that great. And that if we're going to go for a Green New Deal without even trying these other solutions that have been proven to work, I'm really skeptical.
And
I think I was trying to maybe play devil's advocate for people who support the Green New Deal would say, if you do, let's say you use a carbon tax just to get people to produce less carbon, emit less carbon, that will change the way that will change the amount of carbon they produce given the machines and technology that they currently have. But it won't be enough to get them to basically abandon the previous way of generating electricity or producing something and create a brand new way, because it's more of a nudge than a hitting them over the head with a hammer. And I'm devil's advocate here. The Green New Deal advocate would say the reason we can't rely on a carbon tax or a cap and trade system is that it bends the system, and that's not enough. We need to break this system so that a new one you can build back better. Joe Biden says that mostly relative to his like infrastructure plan, but the same idea could be that the government is the only institution that's even capable of doing something like that, where we just completely get off this one system and go to the other. Every other way, the market solutions, which you're talking about, Philip, I'll call those the market solutions. They can work and they have been proven to be effective to work, but it's still more of a bending where people are like making adjustments and changing things in a sort of slow, gradual way, and doesn't, they still don't have the incentive to stop doing things this way and completely change the way that they're doing. That would be probably what they would say. Remember, I signed the thing that supported the carbon tax, though. When I was asked, I'm one of 5 VCU economists who signed it. Anyways, none of the 4 people are willing to say this. Tells me something. People are for the Green New Deal, but they don't feel strongly about it, and they don't have the courage to defend it in a public forum. Let's see, Peter, what'd you say? I'm still for it because I think it's necessary to prevent the loss of large amounts of coastal land, help reduce the damage done by increased food. Yeah. Okay, Peter. We didn't talk about that. The cost of not doing it in terms of environmental costs. That could be something, right? I don't believe the 90 trillion, but what if the cost of dealing with climate change grows that fast too? If we go up to 3 degrees Celsius above the previous level, just imagine how costly that will be for people to have to deal with the rising coasts and the acidifications of the oceans and the melting ice caps. And there's a lot of problems. We've seen something about them, but there's a monetary cost to that too. And maybe that's partly what he was talking about. Lauren says long-term environmental effect and sustainability. Okay. Is it efficient though? Nobody's saying whether it's efficient. Is the market approach more efficient, do you think? Market approach would be carbon tax or cap and trade.
I have a question.
Okay.
Because the non-renewable resources is finite, So will the extraction cost and marginal cost increase? Like as year pass by, as you extract the resources, and it will be, and towards the end, it will not be as efficient to extract all these resources, and it basically provides an energy based off the resources.
Interesting. I think you're saying, like, let's take crude oil or yeah, petroleum. It'll be more and more costly to get it once it's further and further underground and harder to reach places. I sort of agree. That's good. What we've seen so far is that the technology gets better too. So people get better at extracting it. And so in terms of the cost, I don't think it's changed that much. You can tell what the price of gasoline is now relative to 30 years, 60 years ago. It goes up and down, but it's not like you said, Lauren, where we've gotten to this point where just extracting it is so expensive that the price has gone way up. That hasn't happened yet. But could it happen in the future? Yes, I think it could. I think that could be a good point. But that could be an argument in favor of a market approach, right? If you think that's going to happen, that the price of these non-renewables are going to go up, then the market will be pushing the energy sector towards renewables, won't it? We don't need a massive government stimulus to force people to switch from to renewables, because the market will sort of force them to do it, quote unquote, force them to do it. They'll have the incentive to do it if what you said is true, that the cost of extracting oil is so high, and especially if that happens soon. Now, however, what if what you said, what you're predicting isn't going to happen for a really long time, and let's say 50 years from now, that it won't happen until 50 years. If we go 50 years at the same level of carbon emissions, that could be bad for our Earth in such a way that we, you know, Tony, you said this, there's a level, if you go above a certain level, you may never go back down, or at least, you know, not until the Earth makes another wobble towards another ice age or something. Yeah, so
That's right, because like at this moment, we are heading, you know, we'll eventually go past 2.0. So it is not ideal to go at a slow pace to, like, you know, replace everything within you know, the next 50 years. It's preferable that we do it immediately, as soon as 10 years. Because
yeah,
by far it's already a little bit too late. So if we make changes
Yeah.
right now,
it is already good.
it'll at least, you know, make it a little bit better for humanity.
Yeah. This is a tough question. You know, thank you, James and Tony, for giving your presentations. If anybody wants to say any more about, like, if they've switched or if they still basically feel the same about what they did, that's fine. We should talk about the rest of the class. Next debate is going to be one that I won't have time to lecture on. I feel really bad about that. I can post a little thing online about free trade agreements. Will we be having any more quizzes? Yeah, we have to have one more quiz. I'll have it after the last class. So like on Tuesday, May 4th, I think it is, we'll have our final quiz afterwards, after class. I'll make it like give you like a whole day to do it or something. So it's more like a take-home quiz. And that'll be Tuesday. And then I will ask for your final term papers to be turned in on Thursday, May 6th. That's okay. I know that's soon, but I think you can do it. Hopefully you guys have already made some progress. And you know, if you still want me to take a look at something you've written, you want to send it to me like early before you submit it, you can do that. Before you submit it on Blackboard, you could email it to me. If I have time, I'll give you some comments.
I have a question on that.
Okay.
On Blackboard, it says to turn it in 1 week, at least 1 week before. So today, if we turn it in like tomorrow, is that okay?
I don't want you to turn it in Blackboard. I want you to just email it to me.
No, like to review. It says you have to submit it. Sorry, give it to you 1 week before.
Yeah, if you can do that, I will try my best. Yeah, okay. I should have time. I just, like, if everybody's doing it right at the end, I wouldn't have time to give everyone comments. It sounds like you're probably one of the only people who's gonna do it, though.
I just have one paragraph left and I'm done.
Okay, yeah, you can send it to me. Let me stop recording.